Hi, this is Bob Samuels from Tech Connector and host of the ABM Leaders Group. I'm a connector and a student of the game of ABM B2B marketing. As part of my job, I have the pleasure to interact with and learn from some of the best ABM leaders and B2B marketers in the world. As you may also be, I'm fascinated about ChatGPT and other AI tools and how they can supercharge your ABM ABX marketing efforts. Thank you for joining us today. I'm delighted to team up with my co-hosts Kimberly and Akshata for what should be a highly spirited and educational candid chat with David Kirkdorfer about how he is utilizing AI as his superpower tool and his ability to advise his marketers and their messaging. Each of you on the panel today, if you can please introduce yourselves, including your background in ABM and AI, and a fun fact or two. Kimberly, you want to start?
I will start. Now I'm getting some feedback here I see about my mic. So I am tending to be loud anyway, so I'm going to try to make this work. I'm Kimberly Stevens. I've been in kind of the digital space for a very long time. Most recently was at Hushly as the Vice President of Customer Success. So I have a lot of experience working with really big brands on how to improve website conversions, on engagement, and hopefully that leads to revenue. Fun fact for me, I lived in the Czech Republic where I met my husband, so he's Czech. And I have a cat named Cheeto that I'm completely obsessed with. Yeah, I think that's it. I'll hand it over to Akshata.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kimberly. I'm so excited to co-host this webinar with all you wonderful people today. Sharing a quick brief introduction about myself. I'm the CEO and founder at Digiholic. We are a small, cute little agency based out of India. We are a fierce female-driven squad, weaving together strategies that cover everything right from branding to marketing. Our expertise when it comes to digital marketing ranges from a wide spectrum that includes ed tech, HR tech, health tech, land tech. We are into the B2B lead gen space. That's how I know Bob, where I work with Tech Connector for their marketing needs. And we also work in the digital transformation space. A fun fact about me would be, this little nugget about my past. As a kid, I had this quirky dream of running a food truck empire, all sparked by the show called Eat Street on Fox Traveler. That's decades back. So yeah, if it were not to be branding or marketing, I'd be running a food truck. Who knows? Coming back to today's webinar, I'm absolutely obsessed with delving into website user experience and usability and uncovering those hidden gems that David is about to, enlighten us with. That's going to make all the difference. So let's make it a chat to remember. Over to you, David.
Thank you, Akshata. My name is David Kirkdorfer. Hello. I'm calling in from Boston, Massachusetts, as we're talking about all these locations. I have been a B2B technology marketer for about 25 years. And in another 5 years, it'll also be 25 years. I've been a VP. Yeah, at a certain point, doesn't matter, right? I've been a VP 3 times, a senior director, a director of marketing 5 times. I've been involved in 4 acquisitions and 1 IPO. And I've worked at a mix of startups and scale-ups and some large publicly traded companies. I, as a demand gen kind of person, wearing a demand gen hat, when I put that on, I very much care about what the website has on it, because I've come to realize that the success of my marketing campaigns oftentimes is a reflection of how well prospects can understand what they see when they come to a website. So I've kind of found myself gravitating into the messaging side of things. Fun fact about me, let's see. I used to be in rock bands that toured up and down the East Coast of the United States, and I put out about, through bands or solo, 10 CDs at this point. And if you're very, very, very curious, ask for a link and I'll send you something.
You could share your YouTube channel link here if you have one.
It's a SoundCloud. I'll send to SoundCloud. So anyone do SoundCloud. So it's very simple. SoundCloud.com/undo music. UNDOMUSIC. And you'll find some of my more recent stuff.
Good. We'll share that. Thank you, David. So David, you fascinated me when we spoke. I don't know, it's been a year or two ago, but the four things you ask. It's a very elegant way to kind of look at a website from the ideal customer's perspective. What are those four questions that you envision that the prospect should be asking or are asking, and viewing this website and how efficient it is on getting the message out?
Sure. So my inspiration is to try and be buyer, reader, visitor empathetic. What do they care about? What's on their mind? If they're a first-time visitor or a repeat visitor. So I try and orient my thinking towards that. My first guiding principle is that the website is really not about us, it's about our prospects, it's about our customers. And if the prospect and the customer can see their story being told, then they're going to find affinity and recognize and say, these guys kind of get us. So that sounds wonderful. How do you become more empathetic? Well, I've got 4 questions that I like to go through in my mind as a way of doing a litmus test on a website and on content that's created. The first question is, and I think this is a question that a lot of us ask when we are in technology and going off to a website, maybe we've been recommended something, is we ask, gosh, is this in a category that's suitable, that fits our situation? Am I looking at the right category? Because there are so many different technologies out there, and there's so many overlaps between them. It's a very legitimate question for a VP of marketing, let's say, when there's something like 10,000 solutions out there, to ask, are we even looking at the right category of solution here? So many of them promise better leads at lower costs. Great, but are we looking at the right category? So I'll get into what that might mean for us as content on our website in a moment, but just to get through the questions. Second question we would ask as a visitor coming to a website is like, okay, well, within this category, is this a vendor I should be considering? Is this contender vendor, if you will, right? And sometimes if we're lucky and we have the access to it, there are things like Forrester Wave reports and Gartner Magic Quadrant reports. And they're actually quite interesting because they provide guidance on the first 2 questions a little bit. If you're a subscriber and you have access to these reports, the report tries to identify, here is a category. Here's what it is, here's what it isn't. And then here are the different players within the category that you may want to consider for you. And all of those reports have a caveat in them to say, just because one vendor is in the tippy top corner, doesn't mean that's the right vendor for you. Which leads to my third question that I ask, and I kind of try to use as inspiration for content on the website, which is, again, from the buyer's perspective, the buyer says, gosh, would I be successful implementing this technology, the implied workflows, the necessary integrations, whatever they may be, right? Deploying it, rolling it out, getting it going at my company with my tech, with my existing workflows, with my teams, with my people. So the reason we ask that question, and you might think it's a bit of an evolved question that you only get to further down the funnel, and I would suggest that's not the case, and we can come back to why. But the critical point here is this question is viewed and positioned from the buyer's perspective. They're looking for their success, and they're looking to your website to help answer, to provide information that would give them an answer to their question. Would I be successful implementing this? And then the last question they all ask is, gosh, would I be successful getting value out of it? Is the process of installing it, perhaps uninstalling another process, at the cost of buying it, deploying it, and maintaining it, is it worth it? Am I going to get a business economic benefit out of it? And so, of course, pricing is an important component of that. But then there's other things that go into the overall cost from a buyer's perspective. And again, I'm thinking in terms of B2B and technology primarily. So I know that taking out an existing technology and breaking an existing process comes with a cost too. It's not just you buy it, you have to, there's a whole kind of implementation cost. So those are the 4 questions. Very quickly again, are we looking at the right category of solution to address our situation? Within this category, am I looking, is this a vendor contender that I should be considering for us, right? Third question is, would we be successful adopting, deploying, rolling out, integrating, getting going with this technology, with its implied workflows and changes to what we have to do on our end? And fourth question is, would we be successful getting economic value from the whole process once we decide to do it? So those are the 4 questions.
Wonderful, wonderful. Kimberly or Akshata, do you have any questions to start?
Well, what was interesting to me, we were kind of chatting before everyone got on, is, everyone metrics, again, David, you're talking about, right? Making sure that you're answering those questions, but how do you validate that, right? How do you come up with this core set of metrics? What are the important ones? I've just seen a lot in terms of people developing. You mentioned the Forrester report. We all know, I think one of the most valuable tools that anyone can have is how are you using your own, showcasing how you're using your own technology to derive business value. I feel like companies out there that cannot tell a potential customer how I'm using my own technology, my own solution, that is the most powerful case study you could have, is those how-to. So I'm interested in hearing your recommendations for specific types of content that resonate with ICPs, and then how you actually share these KPIs across the organization to say whether it's effective or not.
Okay, that's a great question. So two thoughts there. Well, multiple thoughts. I don't know how many. Let's see how many come, right? First is, I would want to do an inventory of the information that's on my website to just kind of first take a pulse. Do I think I've got, information on the website that helps answer these questions? And you might be surprised to discover, yeah, I'm not doing so bad on question 1 and question 4, but I realize I really don't have very much there on question 3. And indeed, it's interesting. I asked I did a LinkedIn poll back when those were popular. Remember those? And I asked salespeople specifically this question: what information do you feel you most need in your sales cycles today, and what information do you most feel you have access to and can share? And there was the biggest gap between what they feel they've got and what they feel they need is around question 3. This availability of information to help people understand what it takes to digest, is maybe a word, or ingest this purchase, this, what is it going to represent? It's this idea that the buyer is trying to figure out is, imagine I've already got this. What's it like to operationalize it? Can I do that? Is it too big or too small? So the first thing, coming back up, take an inventory of the information you have. And you might discover, I think we're doing this, and we've got a place where we have a gap. Incidentally, it may be that this question 3, and I like to think of this, a lot of this information you may have packaged as sales enablement. It is presented to a customer once the customer has revealed themselves to us and is engaged and is part of a process. And so we give them answers to those types of things. We've got lots of documents. I would argue, make it buyer enablement and put it on your website. Let buyers self-select. So some organizations shy away from sharing certain types of information. And increasingly, if your competitors are sharing it and you're not, you are at a disadvantage. So take a pulse, see if your competitors and yourself are at parity on the kinds of information you're sharing. Because if you're not sharing details that your competitors are, you're at a disadvantage. So back to your question, how do I gauge then, what content could it be? Okay, so analyst reports can be helpful to help describe what is the category. Perhaps you would have information on your website to describe what category you're not in, especially in fast-moving spaces where there is overlap between things. So by defining what you're not, you can help kind of clear away sales conversations that you really oughtn't be having. Case studies are important. They come up because they provide validation on if it's a well-written case study, what did it take to digest it? What kind of benefits are we receiving? Why did we consider you as an organization? You could, in fact, use these 4 questions to perhaps create a different type of case study, or one that is more focused on the buyer's desire. There are going to be answering question 3, for example, an important question. Many people go off to review websites. There are lots of reviews websites today, G2, Capterra, and so forth, because what people are trying to do is get to these details. What does it take to deploy this? what are the pitfalls I want to try and avoid? Am I able to avoid them? Forewarned is forearmed, and so we're looking there. Lots of points. In fact, I kind of wish that I have a spreadsheet that anybody who's on this, listening to this now, send me a LinkedIn DM, and I'll be happy to send you a spreadsheet that categorizes the 4 questions and 20 or 30 different types of content, because I don't have it up now, and my mind is like, I'm not thinking of it all. ROI calculators. Do you have a calculator on your website that can help realistically show and share how value is calculated, when it might arrive, what it might take to do? Those are just some examples. I want to also, so that's a long answer. Let me stop there. Sorry, there's some other things I'd like to say, but I want to kind of come up and let you see if you have any quick questions or you'd like me to dive in on something there.
To add
Excellent.
to that, David, I think that was wonderfully answered. I guess to add to that, I would add ebooks. I would also add downloadable white papers and infographics if that makes sense to a website. So yeah, those are the additional things that I would add into your list.
So,
I just wanted to break in with the ebooks and the changing of content, because again, I've seen a lot of numbers working at Hashling with a lot of people, and this was what we were all about, is looking at having a quantifiable way to say is the content working or not. And I will say I've seen a huge shift. People are not reading 20 and 30 page white papers anymore in ebooks. I always was advising people, look, if you can have your salespeople, and again, I'm all about authenticity and transparency. And this goes back to your point, David, really, I think, which is I would talk to people all the time that don't want to put a pricing guidelines up on their website because they want to force a customer to have a conversation with the salesperson. We all know now we're turning into a new world now where you can't, if you're going to keep this information, to force somebody to engage with you about something, like this is not working anymore. Pricing sheets, put them up there. Have real life salespeople do on the fly demos. The more video, the better. Because people are not reading 5-page ebooks. They won't even watch a 30-second video. So I'm starting to tell people, think about this, guys. And David, going back to your point, it's got to be substantive. It's got to answer those questions that the customer has. But the less, the better. So I would caution people to not keep doing the same things that we have been doing in marketing even a year ago, because I've seen that content shift. And watching someone put a 30-second video is so critical to get them even to read a 5-page ebook, right? You got ChatGPT. It's going to answer your specific questions you got. Unfortunately, people are not taking a half an hour, 40 mintes to consume a piece of content anymore. It's just not the reality of the world we're living in.
It's very true. Let's take pricing as an example. Imagine you're trying to buy some technology for your company. Perhaps you're in a situation you're going to be buying technology for your company, and you have narrowed the category down, and you've got 3 or 4 contenders that you're thinking of. Perhaps you've come by them through references that have come through communities that you're part of. You might say, hey guys, I'm trying to find this. What are you guys using out there? What do you like? what should I know in advance that you'd want me to know, any war stories and so forth. And you've gotten some guidance. And this is what we do now because we have access to these communities. This new way was greatly accelerated, but was already present, but greatly accelerated by COVID and everyone working from home. So all of a sudden, communities just like exploded, lots of them, and the helpfulness that we provide each other is key there. Back to the pricing. You may not want to put your exact pricing up. Indeed, the more complex and big the product is, the more the pricing is highly variable on configuration issues, customization issues, data flow issues, and so forth. And a buyer of that technology is going to understand that. So you could indicate, however, what a range might be. Like most of our customers pay between this and this. Could be quite a large range, but nevertheless a range. And you might say the components that make up pricing are the number of nodes. I'm just making up some stupid language here, but we're familiar with it, right? Or the amount of data, or kind of give some guidance on here's how pricing is calculated so that you're trying to share something to give a range. Turn it around a little bit. Job applications are like websites. I want to know what the job is about, what it takes to succeed. And there's a big push, of course, to put the price, i.e. the salary, on the application so that people know, what are we getting into? Is this a fit? Is this not a fit? No, they're calling this job at way too low a price for me. Okay, so it's a bit of a reversal of the role. But when you see a price that's way out of your league, that's helpful to the company, because now there are conversations not happening that are wasting people's time. So the transparency is a two-way street. What we're trying to do is we're trying to help the buyer select us. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to give them the right information. And your point, Kimberly, about people not having the patience for things that they used to have, absolutely. We're not filling in a form. I am not revealing myself to you until the last possible minute. So if you have gated great content behind a registration wall, I won't know. And if your competition hasn't, and it's freely accessible, I will know about what they have, especially if you're a startup, by the way. Startups are selling ideas. So why would I want to put a gate in front of my idea is my kind of rhetorical question. I understand the sales aspect to this, but ultimately, I think it may have worked before because that was what everyone else did. But your content strategy and your openness and ability to answer questions the buyers have is a strategic differentiator now, especially if you are not doing it and everybody else in your category or your competitors are. It'll impact all of your sales. Okay. I get passionate about this.
David, I have a quick question for you, David. So since you mentioned about startups selling ideas, I wanted to know which element do you think holds more influence in encouraging users to explore your website further? Is it engaging visuals? Is it compelling storytelling or interactive features on the website? Or do you have anything else that you could suggest that would encourage users to stick to your website?
So I like to think of the hero section. That is the part of the website that typically is visible above the fold, to use that old newspaper expression, I guess. That on a typical 14-inch laptop, I guess, is certain what fits above the fold is different on your different screens. But let's just take a laptop, right? As the most expensive real estate your company will ever own, pixel for pixel, you generate more business because that part of the website did a good job of bringing me in. So as I think about that part of the website, I want that part of the website to be very easily understood by my buyer, that the buyer recognizes the pertinence of what we offer and is intrigued and is encouraged to continue, as opposed to continue looking at the rest of the website, right? So on that page, I like to think in terms of saying something that the buyer is trying to achieve, saying something that the buyer is trying to run away from or leave or not have happen again, and if possible also above the fold, representing showing some social proof, maybe some logos of other players who have done, excuse me, customers who have done this. So the things I'm trying, and then that's the text. And then I like to have a picture that is a graphical representation of the results that the buyer will be able to achieve using your technology. So I'm going to focus on the results, or a before and after, or potentially now maybe we would put in a short kind of self-played explainer. It really depends on the technology, of course, what you want to do and how complex it is and so forth, right? So the more complex it is, the harder it is to kind of boil it all down, because there are so many aspects and so many things that are being touched. Grammarly, for example, does a really great job of this. You see the product in action. You see it right there. It's like, oh, look, that's how it works. That's what I'm going to get. Cool. And it gives you a quick description of what it is and what it and what you get from it, and what you stop doing now that you have it. So I also like to think in terms of my Spock brain. That is the Spock from Star Trek, Mr. Logical, right? Who will have a logical reason for things. And my Homer brain, that is the donut-loving character that we've all loved on TV for the last 25 plus years, who's a bit more emotionally reactive to things. I need to appeal to both sides. I need to kind of share what it is in a logical way, but also hopefully tapping into an emotion of success, or I want it, or that's what I want, you know, kind of slightly more basic. There's a lot in what I've just said. And so that makes the hero section really difficult, doesn't it? Once you start to say, well, you need a bit of this, you need a bit of that, and then there's the words, and then there's pictures. Yeah. And
it's difficult because you're saying that, you know, you need to tell a story, but at the same time, you're saying that hit at the right point. So, you know, you want it to be brief while you're telling a story. So those are two difficult things. And, you know, how do you put them together, David?
It's got, well, that's that. Okay. So coming back to a question that Kimberly asked, how do we measure the success? And here what we have is the success of communication, the success of impact, the success of people getting it, right? Your ICP getting it. So there's a market research is the way. Ask your prospects. Maybe you have an ability at varying levels of varying degrees to vet ideas with existing customers. Perhaps you've got a technical advisory board or some kind of advisory board that you're able to go to. You do it yourself if you have a certain kind of wherewithal and capabilities. There's also services out there that can do this for you if you don't. And I highly advise, I advise my clients to work with a company called Winter, W-Y-N-T-R, Winter. And they have an interesting process where they will take your current information, websites, maybe test websites that you have, right, and present it to your ICP. They have lots and lots of very large panels of different types of buyers who then will provide candid feedback. They will remove logos. They will remove certain information that identifies. Thank you. Yes, that is the URL. They'll remove certain identifying information that sometimes can provide, you know, branding information that gives you confidence in a solution, and just get an evaluation of what's being said, how it's being said. Does it resonate? Is it generic? Do people understand what it means? And provide you qualitative information to guide how your website is, your homepage, whatever page, landing page, is being understood by your buyer. So that's one way, and very, very important, I think, because from within a company, we often buy our own Kool-Aid. We drink our own Kool-Aid, as the expression might go. We're guilty of already knowing what particular words mean to us. You know, they're like secret words. When we talk about observability, we're thinking in terms of these things. Doesn't mean that's how it's understood by a prospect out there. So getting this outside in view of our key language, or, language fit. We talk about product market fit. This is trying to find language fit. Is our language resonating with our ideal buyer? So this is an important way. Another way, just to come back to Kimberly's question, there used to be, people would use tools like heat maps. Where are people going, not going? Where does interest die off? Interesting. That helps me mechanically understand certain things about my website. Perhaps there's certain statistics you can get from various, website information about what is the path that people are traveling back and forth. So on the website, I mean to say, to complete the idea, where are they abandoning? What pages are they gravitating to? What's their typical journey, so that you can optimize those pages to try and give them the information they're looking for ultimately. So lots of thoughts there. Hopefully that helped unpackage. Obviously any of these things are a complete webinar just of themselves. So I know I'm dancing at a pretty high level on some of these questions for some people who are specialists.
Thank you, David. So I'm gonna put up a poll now asking people, and where do they think they are as far as getting their website in a state where it's effectively messaging what they want to their ideal customers. And then they can do that on the side while we keep going. And then soon, because we're about halfway mark, I want to interject about AI and how you're using AI to supercharge all of this and do your market research on your competitors and on your customers and so forth.
Absolutely. These are great questions. Yes. So maybe I should change hat at this point. I've got another hat. It's important to have different hats.
There we go. I like that hat.
There's my marketing hat GPT.
I love it.
So I have found that ChatGPT version 4 is immensely helpful for me as I try and tune content to be better, more empathetic to my customers. It's an assistant that doesn't get precious about his or her words, seems to be indefatigable, has access to an awful lot of information, and comes back with answers pretty quickly. And interestingly, has the ability to criticize their own answers, and something we might talk about. So where would you like to, there's a couple of questions that come in on the side. I want to see if, I'll let you tell me if you want to jump into those, but what would you like to talk about specifically about AI and customer empathy?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing that, when we were talking the other day about, being able to use AI to explore like how you compare to your competitors as far as how you're getting the key messages out, and how are you identifying what the key messages should be based on knowledge of what the ideal customer would want to have as their key features that they're looking for.
Cool. So I use ChatGPT version 4, the $20 a month version, $20 a month paid version. If you haven't explored this, I would recommend it highly to anybody who is doing marketing today. It is substantially better than the free version, which is trained on like 1/10 of the data. So if you've experienced ChatGPT, the free version, it's pretty cool and it's pretty fast, but the paid version is so much better. One of the key aspects that I get with the paid version is there's the ability to use plugins. And these plugins, one in particular that comes to mind, one called Web Pilot, gives ChatGPT the ability to go off and take a look at a live web page that's on the website, on the web today, on the internet today. So it gives me an ability to ask ChatGPT questions about my own website or my competitors' websites, all sorts of questions. I might build a query in ChatGPT, and we can talk about what makes for a good query. where I provide ChatGPT a lot of information about my ideal customer profile, about one of my key personas. These are the things they care about. This is what they look for. I am, if you will, providing context and situation in advance of my question. And I say, imagine you are one of these people and you are facing this situation, perhaps a buying situation, right? And you've come to my website. And based on what you care about and what you know and what's on this website, what information are you finding here that that's helping you? What questions are not being answered? What information do you wish were here that you could have as part of your, understand and learn about? And ChatGPT, in its own beautiful, special, and quick way, will digest all the content on your homepage or whatever page you pointed it to and give you an opinion. You might precede, let's stick with this before I jump into something else. Then you get whatever results you get. And I would suggest take that result with a grain of salt, because we've all heard about confabulations, right? Those hallucinations. But it might point out something to you that you hadn't thought of, or you think it's there, but apparently it doesn't seem to be coming out. So it can be a kind of a outside in look at your website through a certain type of eyes that you have trained ChatGPT to care about, i.e. your persona details. You might step back. Let's go back. You might say, I am this kind of person working at this kind of company that has these types of cares and desired outcomes. And I have got this problem, and I am trying to look for solutions that might address this problem. And all of these kind of thises in my sentence could be a paragraph or two of detail. The more detail you provide, the better the result. You say, okay, these are all the things that that are on your mind. Please now evaluate these 4 websites, and you provide 4 URLs, perhaps yourself and 3 competitors, and give me an analysis of each website on what information each website presents that is unique and only found on that website, what information is found across all 4 websites, what information does each website seem to spend the most time with or want to communicate the most, what information are you, as this person, still not getting answers to for each website. And so you can, a ton of information back, and you might say, present the information to me for question 1 in a chart, and so forth and so on. And it is giving you very quickly an analysis that you want to go back to slowly to confirm, but it highlights stuff for you to take a look at. And it might point out information gaps, opportunities, where you think you have something, it's confusing. So I use this, I call this role play. Pretend you're this and look at something through that person's eyes, right? Or pretend I'm a this and I want to improve this text. That's something that you see many people do. But I like this, pretend you're a third person and wear those eyes as you look at something and give me your analysis. And then, by the way, you don't have to take anything that ChatGPT provides at face value. You could then say, thank you for that answer. It was helpful. Please, could you critique this answer based on something, perhaps? And you might add into the critique to focus it a bit more. Please critique your answer specifically on something that you care about. And it will come back and say, well, that was a fairly good answer, but it missed out on these things that it could have talked about, which is a fascinating thing. And it refines and gives you a better answer. I view my interactions with ChatGPT as a dialogue. I have a background in doing database queries. So I think of trying to deconstruct my queries into pieces that create a selection set of information that I ask then the next query to leverage in an ongoing stream of queries, if you will. And that's why I call it a dialogue. And I say hello to ChatGPT as my first thing. I'm speaking to it like a person. It makes it easier for me to have that dialogue mind frame. And one last thing, which I don't understand why, but at some point I might get inspired to say, you are now taking your super duper pill that raises your IQ by tenfold. Now, please answer this question again under the influence of this magical power you have just been given. And all of a sudden, it gives me a kind of a more insightful answer, perhaps, or a more deeper answer. I don't know what exactly it's understanding by that rather bizarre, kind of instruction, but it seems to take it on board and do better. It wants to please. So anyway, I've been talking a lot the pill thing is scary, David.
Yeah, it is scary. As long as it doesn't hallucinate, right?
Well, sometimes there's insights in hallucinations too, as we've discovered over the decades. But the sense that we make of what we hear and see is that fresh perspective. Sometimes it might seem like a hallucination. So that's an example of using ChatGPT to be outside in, empathetic from a key persona's point of view. And you might start a dialogue. You say, okay, I'm the CFO, and I'm talking to the CMO about the value proposition for this product or something. What are the likely questions the CFO is going to hit me up with as he talks to the vendor, he or she talks to the vendor about, right? So that perhaps where we can hone our messaging for different types of personas that we know are part of the buying group. And again, it's not about taking what ChatGPT says at face value. I mean, it might identify lots of interesting things, and you judiciously choose where it's helpful to you based on your experience and input. So, and that's what the assistant really does, right? That's the value of great advisors, is they bring to your attention something you might not have thought of before. But they don't do the work for you necessarily, but they brought the attention, and that insight is the key thing that you were looking for. Then you carry forward from there. So I hope that perspective is helpful.
I love that. Thank you. I'll share the poll results from how happy are people. We've got one superstar. They didn't say who they are yet. If you guys want to say, otherwise all of us are in need. Some are weaker than others, but
so 50% of the poll, right? I mean, this is impressionistic data, but 50% say, it's not too, between not too bad and decent, it might be a confusing way of figuring out what that is. But they're on the lower side, seemingly, if they take not too bad, being closer to weak. If one of the things that we were talking about, I think before the conversation started here today, is the speed with which one can update a homepage, for example. And sometimes the homepage is such a political thing, and it was so difficult to get created in the first place, either technically because we're small and these things are heavy lifts, or politically because we finally found the wording that everyone could kind of like get through the filter, kind of like a NATO, note, that we don't update it very much. It's an indicator of an internal company process from a website. If the website is being updated every month, there's certain facility and keeping up with your ideal buyer and new information that comes on board. If it's being updated every quarter, perhaps that's a good speed given your organization and so forth. If it's not being updated till every year, it seems to be as if it might be too long. So we want this content to match our ICP. This is a really important point. As we change our ICP, different ICPs might have different evaluations of whether we're a good fit or not. And we may need to help explain why we are a good fit by changing our messages? Yes, interesting question.
Well, and I just wanted to add, because I think at this stage of the game, and again, this just comes from my experience in working with, there's some great tech out there where you're not updating the web, you're basically with web personalization, you can have hundreds of variations of that website. So it's a strategy thing. There's technology to help people do some really innovative. This isn't the world. It shouldn't be the world anymore, where you're even like weekly updates, annual updates. Like, that's really old school. It's like you probably, and again, it depends on the size of the company. It depends on how well they define their ICP. I still really see a big disconnect between what people are talking about and how people are actually executing. So I think people kind of understand this need to offer personalization. They understand the need to provide great content that resonates with the target audience, but people get overwhelmed. And so I wanted to stress what I think is very important for people who are looking at, I want to do a better job with my website, is simplicity. So I think things have become complex. I think today's marketers, the people that are doing the very best job, are the people that are executing, testing quickly, have their KPIs defined, but they're not getting overwhelmed, and they're able to be in alignment internally on those KPIs. So I see people get overwhelmed and do nothing at all. Where all I will say to people is, let's start with your 5 highest traffic pages and start doing some experimenting. Let's not boil the ocean. Let's not turn this into a 6-month thing with, 10 task force and a bunch of expensive tech. It doesn't need to be like that. Find where your traffic is. Come up with some agreements on what your targets are. Is it getting them into a free trial? Is it, things like, and come up with these starting points. I'll give you an example. People are looking at, they don't even know how to say whether that content's resonating. What we saw at Hashley is you will see people, if they're looking at, multiple pages on a website or in some assets, your conversion rates are going to continue increasing, but then there's a point of diminishing returns. So if someone looks at one page of content, they've got a certain conversion rate. We look at 2 pages of content, that conversion rate is going to increase. 3, it increases. At the point where people are looking at multiple pages, 5 pages is where you start declining on those conversion rates. So what I just caution to people is, look, this is complex. It does get political. You keep saying it, David. So if you can start in your organization with agreeing that you want to have an impact on what that impact's going to be, whether you want them to watch a video, whether you want them to download a trial, whether you want them to book a meeting with the salesperson, let's get alignment on what you want your website to do. Because honestly, in my experience, people aren't even getting that because, right, they're dancing around things. So start small, get some quick wins, know what your benchmarks are. And then, that's, I think, the secret to knowing whether you're doing a good job and continuing to get resources from an executive level to keep doing the work.
Absolutely. No, I absolutely agree with what you're saying there, Kimberly. Start where you can. Different organizations, that might be at different places. Maybe nobody cares that you went in and updated the blogs. So you've got 2 years of blog history behind you. And the ideas are good, but this one seems as if it's 2 years old. The context is still relevant. Maybe updating that blog entry is something that no one's, yeah, sure, update the blog entry. It's not the homepage. It's not political. It's like whoever looks at that anyway, people might say, well, that's the problem. So update it. Perhaps there's some new information to be updated. If you've got some statistics, are there new statistics? Maybe there's a new thing you would like to say, change the date, republish it. It's now a new blog entry. The more you are trying to tune the information to be up to date and helpful, the better. So going back and thinking about that asset inventory that you have, when was it last updated? Some of these things you might decide we should just get rid of them. It's no longer valid. It's not a thing that we do anymore. Maybe that division is sold off, not part of our company, if you're in a large enough type of environment, or that initiative is no longer how we go about it. So taking a look at some of the pages you have, the content that you have, so it's constantly tuned to the now, is helpful. So there's an opportunity to refurbish based on making it more up to date, with new information, which in itself will create a website lift. Just doing that. One thing that is also, one of the other things that's really important as we were talking about websites is more so now than ever before, page load speed. And this is something that comes up. So if your website is websites have fashion to them. Have you noticed? There's a website, you can take a look at it and it says, you say to yourself, oh, that website was kind of made around this time period, right? Oh, the live action video phase of website homepages, they looked cool. And when you first saw them, it's like, wow, that's a really cool thing. But they're really heavy. They take up a lot of resources to load. They may not be mobile friendly. And now Google has changed its ranking criteria and puts more weight on page load speed because so many more people are leveraging the internet through their mobile device. So page load speed is one of those things you really want to pay attention to. It's a technical thing, but it makes it, and it's easily overlooked because we think it's fast enough, but it is a race compared to other people in the same query. So you want your page load speed to be as fast as possible. That might mean reloading all the images with lighter versions of the images. It might mean checking where calls are being made and eliminating some. All sorts of technical aspects to your website. Another thing I wanted to kind of throw into the conversation quickly, as I know we're coming up against the time frame here, is most B2B websites have got a resources pull down menu. And the resources pull down menu very often has subdivisions like webcasts, blogs, white papers. And what we've done when we create those categories is we've categorized the information by media type, or perhaps by the team that creates them, right? But we haven't categorized them by the types of questions that people ask. So now I'm trying to learn about this company and I go to the blog and I want to know what's it going to take for me to be successful as I deploy this thing. I go, I wish I could query within the blog set something that then could return the information back. So two thoughts. One, can we categorize the information or name it and perhaps add a quick abstract blurb about what's in it so that we reveal how this content might be valuable? Sometimes we've got catchy titles that don't really tell us what on earth is going on inside it. And I don't want to wade through 45 minutes of webinar to figure out this wasn't a good fit for me. So if we can categorize the questions to be empathetic to the to categorize the content we have to be empathetic to the questions that our buyers have, so that they can find what they're looking for rather than being forced to wade through tons of podcasts and webinars and all this great content we've created. But it's very hard for you to find the nuggets of what you want. So I'm taking a bit of time to highlight our resources pull down menu and the way we subdivide things and make things available there could be a failure, even if we have great content, because we somehow haven't categorized it, made it easy to find, made it accessible in terms that our buyers care about. They didn't come to our website saying, whoopee, I can look at 5 webinars now. No, they're trying to get an answer to a question really quick. So there's that, and I'll come up for air.
Beautiful. All right. So we only, like we said, we only have time for 1 or 2 more questions. The poll answers, we all don't update our websites too much. Some people do, but majority of us don't. One final poll, just because, let me see back up. back. Okay, never mind. So stop sharing. Launch. Okay. So last one. I'm just curious how people are as far as their adoption to AI, using AI in their marketing world. Go ahead, Kimberly Shot. Did you have one more or two questions real quick? You're on mute, Kimberly.
I had a quick question, David. So
Please.
apart from ChatGPT, is there any other tool that you have looked at or have you experimented with? So especially when it comes to content, since we write a lot of SEO optimized content, we've tried using copy.ai and Jasper within our teams. Is there any other tool that you've used? Do you think, apart from the content AI tools, are there any tools that you've been using for data and user insights?
Well, I am a heavy ChatGPT user. There are, as you say, lots of other generative tools out there. So you mentioned Jasper. Reggie is another one. There are tools, and Lavender is another one. There's a host of tools that help the SDR and sales rep better craft and evaluate their own emails. So they give guidance on what seems to be working, what might not work, based on millions of records of information. So Reggie and Lavender are two other tools you might want to look at if you're in the kind of SDR phase. It's kind of strange. We don't think of it quite the same way, but there's a tool out there called Crystal Knows, and it's a plugin, and it's been around for ages. And it'll go off and it'll help you evaluate a LinkedIn page, for example, and tell you more about what that person is like, so that you can approach that person more on their level, right? So that's a different kind of tool. It's Crystal Knows, or Crystal, and it's a paid tool. You get a couple of free, dips to see, and you probably will evaluate yourself just to see what the world thinks of you. According to
again,
this. Crystal. Is it either Crystal Knows or Crystal AI? It might be with a K for Crystal. Other tools, we've talked about the words. The pictures are really interesting. There's a lot of visual tools out there that can help you create visuals quickly that might create an association between a situation and the headline. We know that we want images to link to the headline to kind of show what the headline is telling us. And if we go to our graphics team, it could take them a long time to kind of develop something. And now there's all sorts of image generating AI that can be a great boon and help towards that.
I just need to pop off, guys, because I have a hard stop. But it was a great transition, David, because Adobe Firefly, who I'm going to talk about to you right now, is a great tool. I would highly recommend everyone download and start experimenting with it. But Bob, thank you for inviting me to join. And David, I really had a great time today. And I love being a part of these chats, Bob, and hopefully we'll be promoting our little Joyful Led Growth one at the end of the month, which I'm very excited.
Joyful Led Growth, September 28th. We'll put some information on that. We'll also put some links in for some of those tools that David and you recommended. So we'll get that out there. Thank you for joining us, Kimberly.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
All right. So David, it's Akshata, you're back. So I don't know if you have any final thoughts or questions.
Maybe just to wrap up and conclude, right?
Oh,
Be customer empathetic, right? Be customer empathetic. Try and look at the content you're creating outside in. Be careful that you're not using mystery words that you understand the meaning of, because you're inside your organization. You know what those terms mean to your organization. You need to just identify them and choose otherwise. These 4 questions I propose kind of deconstructs some of the information needs. Take an inventory of the assets you have. Try and figure out where you're strong, where you're weak. It'll highlight perhaps where you need to create content. Content is a strategic differentiator among vendors now. The experience I have as a visitor before I identify myself on your website in any shape, way, or form is a strategic differentiator. If I find that I can't get the answers from company A, but I do get the answers from company B, I'm more inclined to talk to company B. But they may have a worse product than company A. I won't know that yet because I still haven't gotten to the use it phase or the try it phase or anything. I've just gotten to the how easy was it for me to understand and get the answers to my information phase. So your content strategy, your messaging becomes your content strategy, and your ability to share it and answer questions is a strategic differentiator. Please think of it that way. It's not just content, by the way, it's ideas. The quality of your ideas is what's happening. Don't mix up quality of ideas with the media, webinar, podcast, whatever it might be. It's the idea and its helpfulness, not the package you stick it in.
Nice one, David.
Thank you. Thank you. Bob, you're on mute. Sorry.
Thank you. Akshata, do you have any final thoughts or questions, or you're good?
Oh, amazing webinar. It's been an eye opener when it comes to certain things on the website element. So I was enlightened for sure, and I'm sure our participants are going to be happy about the things they're taking back from the webinar. Thanks, David. That was really insightful.
I
You're very
agree.
welcome.
And thank you, Bob, for arranging this.
Yeah, well, my pleasure. I'm a little bit self-serving because the smarter you get, the better my website becomes. So hopefully you adapt some David's key learnings to our site. I think it's wonderful stuff. And David, it's delightful. It's always a pleasure, and it's fun to see what you're doing as far as adopting AI into your magic. It's up from here. It's very early on. I'll share the results of the poll. Actually, it's pretty middle, right? People have started. They're a little more along than I thought they'd be. But we've got one person. They're anonymous, but they've got it superstar implementations for AI and their marketing. But most of us are in there playing and maybe finding a few wins so far. So it'll be good to reconnect in a few more months and see how things advance for you.
The technology has advanced so quickly in less than a year. Where will we be a year from now? Who knows? It's just like it is accelerating. So the incremental improvements, it is changing every aspect of our world, and so therefore it's changing our business.
That's a good point. I usually end these with, how are things going to be in 1 year and in 5 years? What's 5 years going to be?
I don't think anyone has a crystal ball that can look out more than 2 years. And it's based on a very few people who have insight into various roadmaps of some of these large models. And I don't think that they've got a roadmap that goes beyond too far either. I mean, famously, people used to predict that actual sentience might be 50 years away. And now folks are saying, well, maybe not. Maybe it's only 10 or 5 years away. So our ability to predict is not very, very good on this, I don't think, because the incremental gains are exponential.
Yeah, good stuff. Thank you both. Thank you, Kimberly, and we look forward to talking again soon. Thank you all.